Oh mio Dio! Guarda!
No.
Bam! What is that? Anybody tell me what that is? We're in the middle of the ocean. On a ferry.
7 West, operating in SoCal Hopperman. Course 270, true speeds 59. At time 0424 Zulu. We have visual of 4 probable.
Hello, fellow citizens of Earth. Today we are tuning in to talk about the bizarre and frankly fascinating statements of the 3 former government officials at the latest U.S. Congressional hearing relating to UAPs and UFOs. But before we start, I want to remind us all that we are all humans here together on Earth. As human beings, we have more power and capability than many of us even realize. And over the next couple years to come, I think we know that there's going to be a lot of information released and even possible contact coming to light in relation to what many call ETs. And I think it's very important to remember our spiritual significance in this wild, wild cosmos and to sharpen our discernment, for we can be sure that there will be false flags and disinformation purposefully spread to try and deceive or manipulate our awareness and, more importantly, our beliefs. So in the last episode, we talked about how one of the former rocket scientists who was taken over from Germany during Operation Paperclip warned us that potentially the US government was going to create a false ET invasion in order to seize or claim some sort of global government and justify putting weapons into space. And we also kind of talked about Scientology, the Galactic Federation, and we were going over the ideas about how a Galactic Federation, you know, this governing sort of political regime of aliens that have some sort of power over the cosmos, is kind of a red flag in itself. And I know that you and I both know that when it comes to truly intelligent, sentient, and advanced beings of spiritual, realization and awareness, they're multidimensional in their nature. They're way above what we can really imagine, and they wouldn't be forming structures that we think of on a Type 0 Earth civilization. So keep that in mind, and just know, don't get distracted from our own spiritual evolution as all this stuff comes out. And yeah, at the same time, it's very exciting. We have always had the question of, are we alone in this universe? And to be on the fringes of possibility that, wow, there might actually be something out there, and not just out there in a faraway distant galaxy, but right here on Earth, interacting with us in small ways. And so much so that there's been thousands and thousands of reports, not just from civilians and people like you and me, but from government officials. And there's tons and tons of classified and sealed away documents that even some of the highest members in the US government don't have access to. So I think that's why this US congressional hearing is very important, because one of the key points they kept hitting is transparency. We want transparency from our government. We want to know what's going on. And there's so many different walls, within government some parts of the government are working with private groups, which means that they don't legally have to release information. So there's all sorts of things going on. And yeah, did you want to add anything?
It was a really long intro then. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just fun to look in and see what's going on and then talk about it as we go. And of course, yeah, it is important to, not take everything that you hear, but also be open-minded to it. And I think most importantly, on a spiritual level, like if something's causing fear, just to remember that's not resonating with you, and to go towards what feels good, and like gives you that resonance and makes your heart feel light and feels good, because that is your truth. And it's important to remember that, to not be sucked into the fear. Personally, I don't think we have anything to fear with the aliens. I think all that is being created by the government, but we'll see. I'm excited. This came out on my birthday, the 26th of July.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So yeah, it was a good, interesting thing to happen, and kind of felt like something like this would never happen.
Yeah.
Which is exciting. Guys, it's an exciting time to be alive, and we should just be here with light hearts, here for the ride, smiling and welcoming whatever's to come, because these are really exciting times, and I don't think there's anything to be fearful of.
Yeah, really, really cool times. And I know that from the light beings that I've interacted with through various meditations and altered states of consciousness, many of them that are here to help are very much ethereal, astral, sort of multidimensional beings. And who knows what, everything that sounds here sounds kind of physical, but also with a twist of multidimensionality to it. And before we actually get started into the react portion of the video, where we will be watching the congressional hearing, I have spliced and cut what I think are the most important parts, though I have not listened to it all. I just kind of went over and made sure that there was a lot of stuff talking about like the transparency of the government, and kind of some of the reprimands on whistleblowers and stuff like that. But I was just trying to get to the good stuff. But before we talk about that, I want to bring up a story. It's a pretty cool story because it kind of helps to open the mind and ease us into this thing. So, basically, it's related to this because it is coming out from a lawyer named Daniel Sheehan, who worked with David Grush, who will be one of the people being interviewed in this congressional hearing. And basically, there was a crashed UFO recovered by U.S. military, and it was apparently distorting space-time and was bigger on the inside, claims a top attorney involved in bringing UFO whistleblowers to Congress. Daniel Sheehan says he was told the mind-boggling tale by a whistleblower who allegedly took part in an illegally undisclosed program retrieving crashed non-human spacecraft, and who has now briefed Senate Intelligence Committee staff. The lawyer's story is the latest in a series of stunning claims this week of UFOs in the government's hands, which began on Monday with an on-camera interview of former senior Air Force intelligence officer David Grush, who we'll be seeing a lot of later. And he alleged that the U.S. government possesses not one, but multiple crashed non-human craft. And he uses the term non-human because he's trying to keep an open mind as to the origin of these craft. He's not sure if it's from outer space, from another dimension, from a different realm, maybe inner Earth, we don't know.
or other parts of the world, like that
Yeah.
are undiscovered, because you just never know.
Yeah. You could have, I don't know, I know you haven't watched the Marvel movies, but maybe some of our viewers have, but there's, in the Black Panther, there's this place called Wakanda, and it's like this highly intelligent, advanced civilization that's hidden from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
You could have a Wakanda situation.
Definitely.
But anyway, Sheehan has been helping whistleblowers like Grush to Congress in an attempt to expose what he believes is a government cover-up of encounters with extraterrestrials. And the attorney told Daily Mail that one alleged recovery recounted to him by a supposed crash retrieval program insider involved a 30-foot saucer partially embedded in the earth with some really fantastic properties. So they tried to hook a bulldozer to it to pull this UFO out of the ground in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. So this is the famous Roswell incident. And when it came loose by a couple feet, they stopped immediately because they didn't want to destroy the integrity of the craft. And they had to go into it. And one of the people in the recovery, when he went inside, said that it was as big as a football stadium. It was freaking him out and started making him feel nauseous. He was so disoriented because it was bigger inside than it was outside. And the man said it was the size of a football stadium, while the outside was only about 30 feet in diameter. And Sheehan said that the space was not the only warped dimension around the craft. He staggered back out after being in there a couple minutes, and outside it was 4 hours later. So he thought he was only in there for a couple minutes, but outside he'd been in there for hours. So there was all kinds of time distortion and space distortion. And physicists have theorized that propulsions of an advanced craft could theoretically involve warping space-time around it to negate the effects of gravity. But Sheehan declined to give further details, including a location and date of the incident, and said he was unable to provide proper evidence for the claims without outing certain people and doing so legally. And so the lack of details obviously have put some skeptics into the mix. But if we continue to piece together all the puzzle pieces of different statements, especially from Bob Lazar or Stephen Greer, and people who are quite who are the whistleblowers in themselves, they always talk, and even Nikola Tesla, they always talk about a space-time bubble, that in order to be able to move so fast against the elements, you have to have some sort of warping going on, and also to travel from star system to star system, you have to be able to warp space and time, or else it's going to take years.
Or like a wormhole.
Yeah. So, and Stephen Greer is the one who said that they warp space and time and then travel through a different dimension in order to go from one pocket to the other.
Yeah, like I've been listening to a lot of Dolores Cannon recently, and she has tons of books on UFOs. And basically her technique is quite different because she doesn't channel, but she puts thousands of different people under hypnosis, and through those people they start communicating all this information to her about aliens and whatever it is, and that sounds really similar to what they were saying, how they can't physically really be here. A lot of the higher beings, when they send through what we know as the greys, these small grey aliens, they're not actual beings. They're not quite a robot, but something similar to that, where it's been designed to be able to withstand our dimension. And also how when that there's thousands of people who claim to have been abducted, and I don't know if you heard of loads of people who had found implants in their bodies and stuff after having an abduction experience, and they say when people, and they might have like bruises and stuff on their body, but it's just because for them to bring the human up into their dimension, it's like it's really hard on the human body. But they were apparently just like because they care about us and the planet, they're just doing sort of tests, and it wasn't anything evil or bad.
I mean,
but
Stephen Greer says that all like abductions are actually U.S. government playing around with their craft.
I used to think that, but then after listening to some of Dolores Cannon's stuff, it kind of makes sense, because if you've heard of the theory that we have the DNA of many different alien species, within us, we're made up of stuff of the stars, right? And if they're from the stars, then they would have a very invested interest in our development and what we're doing.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Yeah.
That's just another concept out there that came into my awareness recently. I started looking into that stuff and just gave me other stuff to chew on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think there's all sorts of like abductions. You can have like an astral abduction, or where and there's all sorts of people claiming that they're mothers to hybrid children or fathers to hybrids. There's all sorts of claims out there. But let's get into some of the more concrete stuff. And so let's dive into this congressional interview, basically. And we'll start with their opening statements and just see what's going on. So, can you hear?
Yeah. All
right, I'll turn it up. Oh wait, before did you pause it? Before we get into it, there's three main people who are being interviewed. First one is Lieutenant Ryan Graves, and he's the executive director of Americans for Safe Aerospace, and he's a former Navy F18 pilot. Second one is David Grush. He's a former senior intelligence officer with National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and a senior advisor for UAP issues. So he's kind of the big guy in here, and as we see, he has a lot of information, but frustratingly, we can't quite get it out of him, in a public setting. And then there's David Fravor, who's a retired Navy commander, squadron leader, and Navy aviator. And each of them have personal experiences with UAP and UFOs. Now, the main UFOs we're going to be talking about are these three right here. And so many people have seen that Tic-tac video, which I'll put up. It's, that kind of low-res footage through the plane, tracking that. Then we have kind of like the typical UFO, which is the, kind of the sports model, the Bob Lazar, the gray, what you'll see in Nevada, and the basic image of UFO. And then we have a very interesting one. It's the cube, the black cube with the clear sphere around it. And these UFOs will all be up on the screen, but let's get into it now.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to quickly say is what's so great is about all kind of, people coming out and speaking about UFOs is there's not really any reason to doubt these people, because they're in very high paid, respected jobs. And why would they want to put that on the line? The same with Admiral Byrd. He was a really high up sergeant or whatever he was, and he had no reason to lie about what he saw.
Admiral
Byrd. And the same with these guys,
Well, as we kind of go into, I cut a lot of it out because a lot of it was the same thing, but it's basically them saying like, we've not gained anything from this. We've lost jobs. We've lost credibility. We've, all these sorts of things. They've just for merely reporting these incidents. So it's really not something that's like gaining them any benefit, and even putting their own well-being and lives at risk.
Yeah, they are the real heroes.
Yeah.
To just make the public aware of the truth and what's being hidden. Whistleblowers, it's amazingly brave to be one.
All right, so let's get into their opening statements.
Have expired. I'll now recognize Mr. Graves for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
First, look at that
Thank
guy's
you.
name, Mr. Grothman.
Chairman Grothman,
Grothman.
Ranking Member Garcia, distinguished members of the
I see
House
some pretty
Oversight
cool names
Subcommittee
in
on
this.
National Security, Representatives Burchett and Luna. My name is Ryan Fobbs Graves, and I'm a former F-18 pilot with a decade of service in the U.S. Navy, including 2 deployments in Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Inherent Resolve. I have experienced advanced UAP firsthand, and I'm here to voice the concerns of more than 30 commercial aircrew and military veterans who have confided their similar encounters with me. Today, I would like to highlight 3 critical issues that demand our action. As we convene here, UAP are in our airspace, but they are grossly underreported. These sightings are not rare or isolated, they are routine. Military aircrew and commercial pilots, trained observers whose lives depend on accurate identification, are frequently witnessing these phenomena. The stigma attached to UAP is real and powerful and challenges national security. It silences commercial pilots who fear professional repercussions, discourages witnesses, and is only compounded by recent government claims questioning the credibility of eyewitness testimony. Parts of our government are aware of more about UAP than they let on, but excessive classification practices keep crucial information hidden. Since 2021, all UAP videos are classified as secret or above. This level of secrecy not only impedes our understanding, but fuels speculation and mistrust. In 2014, I was an F-18 Foxtrot pilot in the Navy Fighter Attack Squadron 11, the Red Rippers, and I was stationed at NAS Oceana in Virginia Beach. After upgrades were made to our jet's radar systems, we began detecting unknown objects operating in our airspace. At first, we assumed they were radar errors, but soon we began to correlate the radar tracks with multiple onboard sensors, including infrared systems, eventually through visual ID. During a training mission in Warning Area Whiskey 72, 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, 2 F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP. The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft and was estimated to be 5 to 15 feet in diameter. The mission commander terminated the flight immediately and returned to base. Our squadron submitted a safety report, but there was no official acknowledgement of the incident and no further mechanism to report the sightings. Soon, these encounters became so frequent that aircrew would discuss the risk of UAP as part of their regular pre-flight briefs.
That's pretty crazy. Just jump off. So there's lots of commercial people reporting, people within the government, and he's saying that, there's a huge stigma attached to it. No one's reporting these things. And then not only
it's
that...
illegal, it's classified as top secret.
Yeah, the footage that they obtain. But then now, not only is it he's become so many people saw this, and it's become so frequent that they have to debrief their pilots and they just said that.
All right.
Yeah, and they have to debrief their pilots on all of this.
Yeah. And crazy that QB one split 2 planes apart, right?
Split 2 planes apart.
Yeah, they was flying next to each other and they had to
Oh,
avoid
right.
it.
Right.
That's what he just said.
Yeah, because it came in so close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, and it's such an interesting one, because I don't know if anyone else has heard this, but I've never heard of the black cube with the clear sphere.
No, this was the first time that when I started seeing all clips of this showing up on TikTok. That's how we found out about it,
Yeah, I mean, that's the source of most information nowadays, isn't it? All right, well, let's see what else he has got to say.
Recognizing the need for action and answers, I founded Americans for Safe Aerospace. The organization has since become a haven for UAP witnesses who were previously unspoken due to the absence of a safe intake process. More than 30 witnesses have come forward, and almost 5,000 Americans have joined us in the fight for transparency at safeaerospace.org. The majority of witnesses are commercial pilots at major airlines. Often, they are veterans with decades of flying experience. Pilots are reporting UAP at altitudes that appear above them at 40,000 feet, potentially in low Earth orbit or in the gray zone below the Kármán line, making inexplainable maneuvers like right-hand turns and retrograde orbits or J-hooks. Sometimes these reports are reoccurring, with numerous recent sightings north of Hawaii and in the North Atlantic. Other veterans are also coming forward to us regarding UAP encounters in our airspace and oceans. The most compelling involve observations of UAP by multiple witnesses and sensor systems. I believe these accounts are only scratching the surface, and more will share their experiences once it is safe to do so. In closing, I recognize the skepticism surrounding this topic. If everyone could see the sensor and video data I witnessed, our national conversation would change. I urge us to put aside stigma and address the security and safety issue this topic represents. If UAP are foreign drones, it is an urgent national security problem. If it is something else, it is an issue for science. In either case, unidentified objects are concerned for flight safety. The American people deserve to know what is happening in our skies. It is long overdue. Thank you.
Yeah,
Mr.
baby.
Chairman, ranking
Long
members
overdue.
and congressmen.
So this is Grush now. He's coming in. But yeah, it's just like he seems very frustrated. He's started his own organization where people can go and report things. And yeah, he's like, if only you guys could just see the footage we have. So it's like the government's releasing some footage, but why aren't they releasing everything? It's really annoying. You know, they're releasing little bits here and there, but what is it that they don't want to release it fully? And I think it's like they're giving us things that are still debatable. Like when you see the Tic-tac video, it's in such poor resolution and quality that it's like, it hasn't quite turned me, you know? It's not like foolproof. So, and I know some of these guys have stuff that will like blow our minds if we see it, but.
Yeah, I really do wonder why that is, why show some of it. I think there is that rule. I'm trying to remember that like rule I heard of the elites. Isn't it? They have to tell you what they're doing somehow. That they can't. You know, I don't know. Maybe like there's something that they have to sort of tell us what we're doing, but it flies under the radar. You know, like so much UFO footage has come out, but you don't really hear anyone talking about it. Like. Yeah. In the mainstream, even though it's been put out, it's like it doesn't stick.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's not concrete enough. The things that they're giving us is like...
It's not like when COVID came out, or like, you know, or there's like, the Ukraine and Russian war, and then everyone's talking about it, and you go down the street and there's posters for everything.
Yeah, the bus stops.
There's none of that
YouTube
kind of
ads.
Reaction with... They're telling us about the UFOs, but there's no reaction. Like, it's weird.
I think it's because it's the public's demanding it. So they're like, okay, what can we give them that will, like, say, hey, we did it. But then it's also at the same time, it's not enough to, like, sway people. Because, like, if we had, like, a high-resolution photo released by the government saying, or video saying, here it is, then, you know, everyone would really start
There's just been
so
many sightings and everything, and it's just there is some weird like sleepy. It makes you just think like so many of the masses are so asleep on this issue, yet other issues it's like it just they grasp onto it and it becomes a big thing.
Well, it's what the media is being paid to push.
But they have put out this stuff about UFOs, but for some reason it's just not getting a reaction like it should be, because it's a big deal.
Because you don't have any more, like, the news channels are entertainment, basically. You know, news channels are...
Or like depressed.
We need views, right? So we need to make something entertaining.
But that's way more entertaining.
I know, but how much footage can they show over and over again of these shitty resolution, low quality things? And... I haven't
watched the news. I haven't watched it on the news. I just know that apparently the government, from watching things like Russell Brand, like apparently they are releasing it on the news channels.
Yeah.
But it's like I'm not seeing it manifest into the collective, and seeing it like I would see the Russian war or COVID made actually affecting our lives.
Yeah. Well, I just think there's not enough out yet.
Yeah.
I think we're still waiting. So let's see what Grush has to say.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So
this is an important issue, and I'm grateful for your time.
He's the intelligence officer.
My name is David Charles Grush. I was an intelligence officer for 14 years, both in the U.S. Air Force, both active duty, Air National Guard, and Reserve, at the rank of major, and most recently from 2021 to 2023, at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA, at the GS-15 civilian level, which is the military equivalent of a full bird colonel. I was my agency's co-lead in unidentified anomalous phenomena and transmedium object analysis, as well as reporting to the UAP task force, UAPTF, and eventually, once it was established, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO. I became a whistleblower through a PPD-19 urgent concern filing in May 2022 with the Intelligence Community Inspector General. Following concerning reports from multiple esteemed and credentialed current and former military and intelligence community individuals that the U.S. government is operating with secrecy above congressional oversight with regards to UAPs. My testimony is based on information I've been given by individuals with a long-standing track record of legitimacy and service to this country, many of whom also have shared compelling evidence in the form of photography, official documentation, and classified oral testimony to myself and my various colleagues. I have taken every step I can to corroborate this evidence over a period of 4 years while I was with the UAP Task Force and do my due diligence on the individual sharing it.
He's the main
This is
man.
because of these steps,
He's in the UAP
I believe
task
strongly in the importance of bringing this information before you. I am driven by a commitment of both to truth and transparency, rooted in our inherent duty to uphold the United States Constitution and protect the American people. I'm asking Congress to hold our government to this standard and thoroughly investigate these claims. But as I stand here under oath now, I am speaking to the facts as I've been told them. In the U.S. Air Force, in my National Reconnaissance Office, NRO, reservist capacity, I was a member of the UAP Task Force from 2019 to 2021. I served at the NRO Operations Center on the Director's briefing staff, which included the coordination of the Presidential Daily Brief and supporting variety of contingency operations, which I was the Reserve Intelligence Division Chief backup. In 2019, the UAP Task Force Director asked me to identify all special access programs and controlled access programs, also known as SAPs and CAPs, we needed to satisfy our congressionally mandated mission, and we were direct report at the time to the DepSecDef. At the time, due to my extensive executive level intelligence support duties, I was cleared to literally all relevant compartments and in a position of extreme trust, both in my military and civilian capacities. I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, to which I was denied access to those additional read-ons when I requested it. I made the decision, based on the data I collected, to report this information to my superiors and multiple inspectors general, and in effect becoming a whistleblower. As you know, I've suffered retaliation for my decision, but I am hopeful that my actions will ultimately lead to a positive outcome of increased transparency. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, so this guy's...
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Congressmen, Congresswomen.
That guy's like lost, you know, he's a former senior intelligence officer. So he's lost his clearance and everything just for speaking up. He was really
high up by the sounds of it.
really high up,
Yeah.
and he said he was given like literally clearance on all those UAP
No,
stuff,
but he wasn't.
except for the crash
crash.
retrieval stuff, because there are secret organizations and like what was the other word he used? Like controlled SAP and CAP.
SAP and CAPs.
Yeah, controlled. So it's obvious that there's different levels within the government, and they're operating above Congress, which is not meant to happen. The U.S. government's meant to be, a democracy involving Congress and everything, so that, people can't have higher up power, but it's obviously not operating that way.
Yeah. It's such a hard one, this, because even just already with just their intros, and we haven't even got into the third guy. It's just 3 guys, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't Stephen Greer speak on this?
He didn't.
Oh, he didn't. Oh, maybe it went on until another day because
Yeah,
I definitely
maybe.
saw him speaking
Yeah.
in Congress. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just a real mind puzzle. It's just so many pieces are missing, and yeah, there's so much information, but also just so many parts missing. There's a lot more to be said and a lot more to come out. Just, that there is stuff that they've already said that they can't say.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's frustrating
You know.
and exciting.
So let's hear David Fravor, because
I want to first thank you for the invitation to speak
Yeah,
to the
he's
committee on the
quite
UAP
humble.
topic that's been in the news for the past 6 years and seems to be continuing to gain momentum. As you know, my name is David Fravor. I'm a retired commander in the United States Navy. In 2004, I was a commanding officer of Strike Fighter Squadron 41, the world-famous Black Aces. We were attached to Carrier Wing 11, stationed on board the USS Nimitz, and had begun a 2-month workup cycle off the coast of California. On this day, we were scheduled for a 2v2 air-to-air training with the USS Princeton as our control. When we launched off Nimitz, my wingman was joining up. We were told that the training was going to be suspended and we were going to proceed with real-world tasking. As we proceeded to the west, the air controller was counting down the range to an object that we were going to, and we were unaware of what we were going to see when we arrived. The controller had told us that these objects had been observed for over 2 weeks, coming down from over 80,000 feet, rapidly descending to 20,000 feet, hanging out for hours, and then going straight back up. For those who don't realize, above 80,000 feet is space. We arrived at the location at approximately 20,000 feet, and the controller called merge plot, which means that our radar blip was now in the same resolution cell as the contact. As we looked around, we noticed that we saw some whitewater off our right side. It's important to note that the weather on this day was as close to perfect as you could ask for off the coast of San Diego. Clear skies, light winds, calm seas, no whitecaps from waves. So the whitewater stood out in a large blue ocean. All 4 of us, because we were in F-18Fs, so we had pilots and Wizzo in the back seat, looked down and saw a white tic-tac object with a longitudinal axis pointing north-south and moving very abruptly over the water like a ping-pong ball. There were no rotors, no rotor wash, or any sign of visible control surfaces like wings. As we started clockwise towards the object, my Wizzo and I decided to go down and take a closer look with the other aircraft staying in high cover to observe both us and the tic-tac. We proceeded around the circle about 90 degrees from the start of our descent, and the object suddenly shifted its longitudinal axis, aligned it with my aircraft, and began to climb. We continued down another 270 degrees, nose low, where the tic-tac, or we considered 270 degrees to where, and we went nose low to where the tic-tac would have been. Our altitude at this point was about 15,000 feet, and the tic-tac was about 12,000. As we pulled nose onto the object, within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerated in front of us and disappeared. Our wingman, roughly 8,000 feet above us, lost contact also. We immediately turned back to see where the whitewater was at, and it was gone also. So as we started to turn back towards the east, the controller came up and said, "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is at your cap point, roughly 60 miles away in less than a minute." You can calculate the speed. We returned to Nimitz. We were taking off our gear. We were talking to one of my crews that was getting ready to launch. We mentioned it to him, and they went out and luckily got the video that you see, that 90-second video. What you don't see is the radar tape that was never released, and we don't know where it's at, of the active jamming that the object put on an APG-73 radar, and I can get into modes later if you're interested. What is shocking to us is that the incident was never investigated. None of my crew were ever questioned. Tapes were never taken, and after a couple days, it turned into a great story with friends. It wasn't until 2009 until Jay Stratton had contacted me to investigate. Unbeknownst to all, he was part of the ATIP program in the Pentagon led by Lou Elizondo. And there was an official report that came out that's now on the internet. Years later, I was contacted by the other pilot, Alex Dietrich, and asked if I'd been contacted, and I said no, but I'm willing to talk. I was contacted by Mr. Elizondo, and we talked for a short period of time, and he said we'd be in contact. A few weeks after that, I was made aware that Lou had left the Pentagon in protest and joined forces with Tom DeLonge, Chris Mellon, Steve Justice, and others to form Two Stars Academy, an organization that pressed the issue with leading industry experts and U.S. government officials. They worked with Leslie Kean, who is present today, Ralph Blumenthal, and Helene Cooper to publish the articles in the New York Times 2017 New York Times, and it removed the stigma on the topic of UFOs, which is why we're here today. Those articles open the door for the government and public that cannot be closed. It has led to an interest from our elected officials who are not focused on little green men, but figuring out where these craft are, where they're from, the technology they possess, how do they operate. It also led to the Whistleblower Protection Act and the NDAA. There are multiple witnesses coming forward to say that have firsthand knowledge, and Mr. Grush just covered that. What concerns me is that there's no oversight from our elected officials on anything associated with our government processing or working on craft. Believe it, not from this world. This issue is not a full public disclosure that could undermine national security, but it is about ensuring that our system of checks and balances works across all work done in the government using taxpayer funds. Relative to government programs, even unacknowledged WAVE programs have some level of oversight by the appropriate committee members in the House and Senate, and this work that is said to be occurring from whistleblower testimonies should not be exempt. In closing, I would like to say that the Tic-tac object we engaged in 2004 was far superior to anything that we had on time, have today, or are looking to develop in the next 10 years. If we in fact have programs that possess this technology, it needs to have oversight from those people that the citizens of this great country elected in office to represent what is best for the United States and best for the citizens. I thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Mr. Fravor, the Tic-tac incident that you and...
Okay. So I just calculated, what he said, he's like, it was 60 miles away in under 1 minute, right?
Yeah.
So for it to reach that speed in 1 minute exactly, it would have to have been going at 3,600 miles per hour, which is, let's see.
3,000, that's a lot.
Which is 5,800 kilometers per hour, and there is nothing that humans have that can go that fast.
How fast does an airplane go?
Let's see, fastest airplane. So, fastest airplane ever recorded is 690 miles per hour.
Whoa, so it's crazy.
And then this one went almost 6,000. It's almost like 10 times faster.
Whew,
in just a
crazy.
quick second. So yeah, this guy, he's had first-hand experience. I know that later on it goes on to say that was his only experience, but there were people who were approaching him and coming up with similar experiences to him. But yeah, it seems like him and the people he worked with were really the people who were paving the way for, the UFO stuff to actually come out.
Yeah.
And they've lost some radar data. They've lost different things as well. It's just gone missing.
Yeah.
But the water stuff is also pretty interesting.
Yeah, I didn't get that, the white water.
So it was, white water happens when there's waves or tumultuous, currents in the oceans where it crashes over and makes that foamy white water.
Was it like swirling or something? I wasn't sure.
Well, it was like, imagine just a clear, still blue ocean, blue skies, no wind, no clouds, just a very nice, sunny, clear day. And in one spot is churning of the ocean. The Tic-tac goes down to that churning in the ocean, and they go down to approach it on their plane. The Tic-tac suddenly turns towards them, heading really fast towards them, then accelerates at an extreme rate, disappears from their view. It's moved so fast. And then when they look down, the white water's gone, and then the other guys who are up above were like, we've lost contact, and then a minute later, they find it like 60 miles away. And so it probably just disappeared because it moved too fast for the human eye to catch, Yeah. So it was, moving at almost 6,000 kilometers an hour. That's just crazy. And I bet it can go much quicker because he said it was going up to space and back down. So who knows what it was trying to do. And what was under the water.
I think it was probably like collecting something.
Yeah.
Maybe like a mineral or something from deep under the ocean, something that's valuable to them.
Who knows? But something was under the water and it disappeared after whatever was in the Tic-tac knew that.
Yeah, it's so weird, like the Tic-tac shape, and none of these things have propellers or wings.
Jet propulsion, nothing.
Yeah, there's.
They have to be using some sort of electromagnetic propulsion or, manipulating space-time and gravity, bending it maybe so that it's almost like, in the currents in the water, how they kind of like spiral around. but imagine that in like space, time, and gravity. So manipulating gravity.
But maybe they was doing something like clearing it.
Yeah,
so
but not the water itself, but just imagine like a river.
Oh right,
with spiraling water, but then imagine that in like a 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional setting where they're using that almost like generating like a river current, but through space time. And if they can amplify those waves, it'll be like on a rapid.
Yeah.
If they can use it to like propel themselves like that way. Who knows? Yeah, so curious what was going on there.
That reminds me of, that object that was recently spotted moving through space. And like
that big, long
some
black
scientists. I don't know, but people tried to say, oh, it's just like a comet or
meteor,
something. But so many scientists were like, this is like literally impossible because there was no like dispersion like coming off after it,
Yeah, no trail line or
no
whatever.
trail line, no heat. It's like that every single moving item like a comet, it would have that, and it didn't have that.
Yeah.
So I really think that was some kind of mothership.
Under the water?
No, that like that was moving through our galaxy.
Yeah, observing us or something. Or some sort of telescope.
Some sort of mothership maybe that's
satellite.
like sending out these little ships. Possibly. Yeah. But how that didn't have that, and then these objects we're seeing here, they don't have that same like fuel coming off them or anything.
No.
Like even to move through space and stuff, there's nothing.
Yeah, and it was jamming their radars and stuff as well, so that it was jamming certain things so that they couldn't like read it.
That you were engaged occurred in 2004. What kind of reporting took place after that incident?
None. We had a standard debrief where the backseaters went down to our carrier intel center and briefed what had happened, and that was it. No one else talked to us, and I was in the top 20 in the battle group. No one came. The captain was aware, the admiral was aware, nothing was done.
Your commanding officers provide any sort of justification?
No, because I was the commanding officer of the squadron, so no.
Was this incident the only UAP event that you encountered while you were a pilot?
No one just wants to talk
Yes,
about
it was.
It's so strange.
Okay. This is for any one of you. Based off of each of your experiences and observations, do you believe UAPs pose a potential threat to our national security?
Yes, and here's why. The technology that we faced was far superior than anything that we had, and you could put that anywhere. If you had one, you captured one, you reverse engineered it, you got it to work, you're talking something that can go into space, go someplace, drop down in a matter of seconds, do whatever it wants, and leave, and there's nothing we can do about it. Nothing.
Okay. You two?
Well, I would also like to add, from a commercial aviation and military aviation perspective, we deal with uncertainty in our operating space as a matter of our professional actions. Identifying friend from foe is very important to us. And so when we have unidentified targets and we continue to ignore those due to a stigma or a fear of what it could be, that's an opening that our adversaries can take advantage of.
Know of many more pilots. This is just those that you're currently working with. Is that correct? Can you expand on that?
Certainly. I'll break that down in two ways. First, when we were first experiencing these objects off the eastern seaboard in the 2014 to 2015 time period, anyone that had upgraded their radar systems were seeing these objects. So there was a large number of my colleagues that were detecting these objects off the eastern seaboard. They were further correlating that information with their other onboard sensors, and many of them also had their own eye sightings as well of these objects. Now, that was our personal first-hand experience at the time. Since then, as I've engaged this topic, others have reached out to me to share their experiences, both on the military side as well as the commercial aviation side. On the military aviation side, veterans that have recently got out have shared their stories and have expressed how the objects we were seeing in 2014, 2015 continued all the way to 2019, 2020, and beyond. And so it became a generational issue for naval aviators on the eastern seaboard. This was something we were briefing to new students. This is something that was included in the notice to airmen to ensure that there was no accidents. And now with commercial aviators, they are reaching out because they're having somewhat similar experiences as our military brothers and sisters, but they do not have any reporting system that they can send us to. The objects that are being seen by commercial pilots are performing maneuvers that are unexplainable due to our current understanding of our technology and our capabilities as a country, and that applies for the military as well.
Mr. Ferrer?
Yeah, I concur with that. We have nothing that can stop in midair and go the other direction, nor do we have anything that can, like in our situation, come down from space, hang out for 3 hours, and go back up.
Thank you. My last question, and sometimes I know you have also said some of these answers in the past, but we're trying to get them on the public record as well, which is really important. Mr. Gresh, finally, do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
Crazy.
And where?
And this guy is the...
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General, and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had the people with the firsthand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General.
Behaviors that we saw in a working area,
Yeah,
we would
so
see these objects.
Crazy. I guess the main points there is just like, we have nothing close to this technology. They can do complete maneuvers that would be deadly to humans if you just suddenly stopped, and then went the other direction. The pure G-force of that would probably splatter your brains within your own skull, if you're doing it through a traditional model of physics. So, there's because it's like,
I think more what they're trying to say is it's a threat for accidents to happen, because there's a very strict flight control thing that goes on, where they know exactly where every single plane is, that the paths are not crossing of each plane,
and they clear airspace for certain
exactly.
testing.
And I feel like these could be deadly weapons.
I'm not saying they are deadly.
Yeah, no, if used in war by humans.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think. But the way they react when controlled by, probably other beings, non-humans.
Yeah.
And even if maybe they are being controlled by, it's just I don't know what's happening. But the way they're reacting, whether they're controlled by humans or not right now, they to me it's not a threat. The only threat is it could distract and cause an accident to someone flying a commercial airplane.
Yeah, exactly. Because no one's reporting they came and attacked us. It's nothing like that.
No, exactly.
But it right now, I think the main census is that these, there's no, he's super high up in terms of government stuff, and there's no access to technology like this that's not even in our modern understanding of physics. So either there's some secret group of humans or something like that who have extremely advanced technology and understanding of physics in a way that, all of humanity doesn't, or it's some sort of non-human origin.
It's like a non-human origin, obviously, because they're collecting the crashed craft and things. But then Mr. Graves did just say, when asked, do you think this is being these objects are being controlled by humans, by the government,
or recovered?
He said do you think some IAPs be controlled by the government? And he said, absolutely.
No, he was saying, have some of these crashed UAPs been recovered?
Oh, I thought he said being controlled.
No, recovered. But they might be being used. Who knows?
Okay.
Because, I know that from Bob Lazar's, he personally witnessed them piloting a small, another UAP in some test flight scenarios. And Bob Lazar was saying that the UFO, almost like you couldn't see it if you were standing directly below it. Mm-hmm. And the way it bent light and stuff was obviously doing something with space-time.
Being at 0.0 Mach, that's zero airspeed, over a certain pieces of the ground. So what that means, just like a river, if you throw a bobber in, it's going to float downstream. These objects were staying completely stationary in Category 4 hurricane winds. These same objects would then accelerate to supersonic speeds, 1.1, 1.2 Mach, and they would do so in very erratic and quick behaviors that I don't have an explanation for.
Okay. Have you spoken to commercial and military pilots that have seen these off of our East Coast?
I have.
Okay. Mr. Favor, I noticed that in the Tic-tac
Imagining
video,
a hurricane and it's just perfectly
it's
still.
Tic-tac like the candy, not TikTok like the Chinese Communist app.
That's correct.
Yes, sir. I just want to make that because my
Communist
daughter
app.
corrected me on that and called me a boomer and said, "Hey, boomer," and I said, "No,
Boomer.
baby, it's Tic-tac like the candy. You're gonna have to just look it up." And but now I would also like to say today is a day of many firsts. It's a miracle that we're having this meeting, and it's also a miracle that my wife has put up with me for 9 years today. Today is my anniversary, so I'm fortunate, as I say, when you're over the target, that's when they do the most firing at you. Do you have any personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured
Just switches
in
topics.
efforts
I like
to cover
this
up or
guy.
conceal these extraterrestrial
Mr.
technology?
Burchett.
Yes,
Wait, what did you
personally.
say?
You didn't
Have you heard? Have anyone been murdered that you would think that you know
has
of
anyone
or
been
have heard
hurt?
of? I guess.
anyone
I have to be
hurt?
careful asking that question. I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities.
Maybe in a
means
we
yes.
could get in a confidential area, skiff. We could talk about that. But I believe that you witnessed an additional object under
So
the
people have
water
been hurt and
in relation to
murdered
your
before
encounter.
coming out.
pause it when we
I will say we did not see an object. There was something there to cause the
So yeah, people have been hurt and murdered for coming out.
Yeah, no surprise.
No surprise. They always are.
Yeah.
So, and it seems like he knows personally people who have been hurt and killed, and he's still coming forward, which just shows like he's literally putting his life on the line with this one, and he's being very careful of what he can and cannot say.
I do think going public gives you some level of protection, but then if you look at a lot of whistleblowers, like who's that most famous whistleblower? He's still in hiding. Snowden, yeah. He's like in crazy hiding. Whenever he's interviewed, it's like it has to be some big long thing where, you know, where they're putting bounces and bounces and bounces on the IP address, so there's no tracking him. It's crazy. So like, I don't know. I hope these guys are okay. I hope their families are okay.
Yeah.
whitewater, and when we turned around, it was gone, so there was something there that obviously moved.
Okay, it was not the same object though that you were looking at, correct?
No, we actually joked that the Tic-tac was communicating with something when we came back, and because the whitewater disappeared.
We were in another instance. We're told about the capabilities of a jamming during viewing of when there were some people chasing some of these objects. Did you experience any of that jamming or interrupting your radar or weapons system?
My crew that launched after we landed experienced significant jamming to the APG-73 radar, which was what we had on board, which is a mechanically scanned, very high-end system prior to the APG-79. And yes, it did pretty much everything you could do, range, velocity, aspect, and then it spit the lock, and the targeting pod is passive. That's what we were able to get the video on.
I'm about to run out of time, but are you aware of any of our enemies that have that capability?
No.
Okay,
Are there common characteristics to the UAPs
He
that
does basically saying there's no enemy technology that could jam those highly advanced pieces of machinery. So he's like, what the hell is this? Interesting.
Yeah, I do think that's what makes me really lean towards like it being aliens, higher consciousness beings, because a lot of the stuff you hear them doing is shutting down like military equipment and things, you know, like when they shut down that nuclear place, like everything broke and got shut down when they were about to do a nuclear test after people seen UAPs. So
well, we gotta get
have
through
been
this,
cited
so
by
let's
different
keep going.
pilots, and can you describe what the convergence of descriptions is?
Certainly. We were primarily seeing dark gray or black cubes inside of a clear sphere.
I'm sorry, dark gray or black cubes?
Yes,
Yeah.
inside of a clear sphere, where the apex or tips of the cube were touching the inside of that sphere. And that was primarily what was being reported when we were able to gain a visual tally of these objects. And that occurred over almost 8 years.
They got
And as far as I know,
many
it's still
reports.
occurring.
8 years of reports, and it's still occurring. What the heck?
So I take it that you're arguing what we need is real transparency in a reporting system so we can get some clarity on what's going on out there, because there are many pilots in your situation, but we should have a way of developing a systematic inventory of all of such encounters. Is that right?
Yes, and I think we need both transparency and the reporting. We have the reporting, but we need to make sure that information can be promulgated to commercial aviation as well as the rest of the populace.
Mr. Grush, what about you? What was your experience after you came forward?
Well, it's only been about 2 months or so I guess my experience has been overwhelming support from former colleagues of mine that have privately messaged me, and I do appreciate that. But I do have knowledge of active planned reprisal activity against myself and other colleagues, and it's very, very upsetting to me.
Coming from where?
Certain senior leadership at previous agencies I was associated with. And that's all I'll say publicly, but I can provide more details in a closed environment.
Okay. Well, I hope you understand that there would be bipartisan rejection of any attempt to vilify, demonize, or engage in other reprisals against our witnesses and people who are telling the truth from their perspective.
Yeah, there were certain colleagues of mine that were brutally administratively attacked, and it actually makes me very upset as a leader to see that happen to other coworkers and actually superiors of mine over the last 3 years.
How do you account for that response? That seems like a bizarre response.
I call it administrative terrorism. That's their quiver, their tool in the toolbox to silence people, especially the career government service cares about their career, cares about their clearance, their reputation to climb the ladder. And when you threaten that career path, a lot of people back off. But I'm here to represent those people. So,
in the last couple of years, have you had incidences that have caused you to be in fear for your life for addressing these issues?
Yes, personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want everyone to note that he's coming forward in fear of his life. To put in perspective, if they were really not scared about this information coming out, why would someone be intimidated like that? Explain to me in detail the event that occurred at Vandenberg Air Force Base.
Certainly. In the 2003 timeframe, a large group of Boeing contractors were operating near one of the launch facilities at Vandenberg Air Force Base when they observed a very large 100-yard sided red square approach the base from the ocean and hover at low altitude over one of the launch facilities. This object remained for about 45 seconds or so before darting off over the mountains. There was a similar event within 24 hours later in the evening. This was a morning event, I believe 8:45 in the morning. Later in the evening, post-sunset, there were reports of other sightings on base, including some aggressive behaviors. These objects were approaching some of the security guards at rapid speeds before darting off. And this is information that was received through one of the witnesses that have approached me at Americans for Safe Aerospace.
Was this documented in any official form, whether it was a police blotter?
Yes, they had official documentation and records from the event that the witness held over the years.
And I'm not going to ask you to do it right now for time reasons, but you'd be able to sketch what was witnessed, correct? And have you seen that before on any other equipment and/or during your flight time?
I have not seen what they've described. This object was estimated to be almost the size of a football field, and I have not seen anything personally that large.
Okay, and then another question on follow-up, referencing the gimbal video Go Fast incident. Can you just clarify, because to our understanding, the footage was actually cut off at a certain point, but what happens at the end of that video, just for those Americans specifically that are wanting to know about the rest of that footage?
Certainly. There was some uncertainty or instability with the object. It seemed to rock a bit, and that's the last I had seen of the video. Much of the data that I would recommend be analyzed would consist of radar data that would provide precise kinematics on the object, as well as the fleet of objects that were operating nearby.
Well, they had a big mothership, 100 yards, red cube.
That's really weird. I didn't even...
And it could...
You didn't put that in your picture.
No.
At the beginning,
No,
I
I
never
didn't.
even heard of that one.
No, because that one was kind of like a curveball. Giant red cube, and then it had like a fleet of other smaller craft along with it, darting towards security officers and then darting off. Very strange.
So strange.
Because that is...
And that's really big,
that's
the size
crazy.
of a football pitch. What kind of football
And
pitch?
a cube, so it's like...
An American football
yeah.
pitch. That's bigger than a soccer pitch, right?
I don't know. I think so.
Yeah, that's really big.
It's huge. Can you imagine those stadiums? It's like a floating stadium size thing that can just dart off in crazy speeds.
Yeah, it's like surely not going to be long with all these sightings that we're all, like the average person is going to start seeing this.
And there must be, it's like, okay, so you have the commercial airspace that, of course, they're in the sky all the time. There's high likelihood. And then there's military, off the coast of military bases. So it's almost like some of them are like monitoring military bases because this was a launch center and these craft looked like they were observing. But they were getting quite like up in their faces. They weren't just observing from a distance. Some of these smaller fleets were darting right up towards them, which is very interesting.
I wonder how people react when they see this stuff, because I was just thinking if that was like coming in our garden,
that'd be awesome,
over our house, it's like how would I as much as like I feel like I would, with everything I know and how I don't have too much resistance to the thought of aliens coming and stuff, how it would be really hard to not like have some level of fear.
I think
seeing something so out of this world, let alone the beings that might pop out of it. Like, I just think, how would the average person react to that? And where I've had awareness of this sort of stuff for decades, so have you, anyone in the more spiritual scene has a deeper understanding, or but I'm just thinking, how would like your nan and granddad react?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it depends on your mode of openness. And I think if you're truly, truly open, maybe like, at the innocence of a child sort of level openness and things where before you're conditioned, you're not really scared of much, But
do you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah,
think that,
and I'm thinking
that this is why it's just so important to make this more of a normal thing, more public, right? Because think you don't have any awareness that this is a thing and suddenly you see it, like that's going to give people a bad reaction. I think that's why it's so important that these people are speaking up and saying, look, this is happening all the time. It's a matter of time before everyone's starting to see this stuff. Like even you were telling me that story about all those people on the flight that saw something and then they was like gaslighted after to believe that they was not really seeing something when everybody on the flight saw it, right?
Yeah, and they'll say, they'll pass it off.
It seems more damaging to be like that because those people would have had that experience and it would have warmed them up to what's coming. And it just makes you think like, wow, it's so important that this is out in the public and we can all as a collective get more on board with the idea of it not just being us here.
Yeah. And I think when something is super far out of your comfort or what it could be an initial shock of terror, and that's just the shock of seeing something you've never seen before. Like imagine just like an animal.
Yeah, that's what I was literally
that
just
appears
thinking.
But it's so different from what like that nothing related to nothing you've seen before. It would be like what the
But then if you think of like someone who moves to Africa and look, lions are going to be sometimes on your doorstep. Right, over time they just get used to sharing their space with something very scary. But we live in France, you don't have lions on your doorstep. If there was freaking a lion going in the back, going through the garden, you would freaking freak out, right? Because you're not expecting it, and that's you would have been hidden from the fact that was happening here. So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, I think when you're aware of it in your environment, you can have a much more better reaction to it.
Yeah. So everyone, hey, keep a lookout. We've got these guys
FAA,
here.
to your understanding, pilots that are seeing this, commercial airline pilots, are they receiving cease and desist letters from corporations for coming forward with information in regards to safety for potential airline passengers?
I have been made privy to conversations with commercial aviators who have received cease and desist orders.
Speed. When those objects broke the sound barrier, did they make a sonic boom?
I was in a jet. You can't hear anything. It's kind of loud in there.
Yeah, you're not able to actually personally tell within the vehicle. I will say the objects that we were seeing, they were spherical, and they were observed up to Mach 2, which is a very non-aerodynamic shape.
What about G-forces? Let's talk about G-forces of those vehicles. Could a human survive those G-forces with...
You actually need a pointed nose on a craft to be able to break the sound barrier. Because if you think about, like, it becomes like when you're going up against the air resistance, if you don't have a, one that's designed for it, it's almost like you're going against cellophane, and you need that pointed nose, and you actually pierce the sound barrier, and that's what that
Jets, they're quite a rounded, commercial jets have quite a rounded nose, don't they?
Commercial planes, yeah, they don't break the sound barrier.
Oh, right, okay.
Those are only like the fighter jets with the...
Okay, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Known technology today?
Sound barrier is fast.
No, not for the acceleration rates that we observed.
Okay. What about what they look like? How close did you get? Did you see a seam or a rivet or a section? And what I mean is, obviously, the jets you're flying have all those things. Did these objects have those?
Do you want to go, Ryan?
I didn't have the detail to be able to tell that.
So we got within a half mile of Tic-tac, which people say that's pretty far, but in airplanes, that's actually relatively close. No, it was perfectly white, smooth, no windows, although when we did take the original FLIR video that is out there, when you put it on a big screen, it actually had two little objects that came out of the bottom of it. But other than that, no windows, no seams, no nothing.
Mr. Grush, as a result of your previous government work, have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself of non-human origin craft?
Yes, I personally interviewed those individuals.
Mr. Grush, as a result of your previous government work, have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself about ATs, advanced technologies that the U.S. government has?
Based on conventional advanced tech, I was briefed to the preponderance of the Defense Department's both space and aerospace compartmented programs, yeah.
Have satellites all over the place, some that we're aware of and many that we're not aware of, right? We're taking pictures of everything at every point and second. Mr. Grush, are you aware, do you have direct knowledge, or have you talked to people with direct knowledge that there are satellite imagery of these events?
That was one of my primary tasks at NGA, since we process, exploit, and disseminate that kind of information. I've seen multiple cases, some of which, to my understanding, and of course I left NGA in April, so that's my information cutoff date, but I personally reviewed both what we call overhead collection and from other strategic and tactical platforms that I could not even explain prosaically. And I have a degree in physics, by the way, as well. And I am aware that you guys have not seen these reports, unfortunately, and I don't know why.
Do you have direct knowledge, or you've spoken to people with direct knowledge that this imagery applies to crash sites, crash imagery?
I can't discuss that in an open session.
Okay. Do you have any information that the U.S. government is involved in a disinformation campaign to deny the existence of certain UAPs?
I can't go beyond what I've already stated publicly in my News Nation interview because it touches other sensitivity.
Has the U.S. government become aware of actual evidence of extraterrestrial, otherwise unexplained forms of intelligence? And if so, when do you think this first occurred?
I like to use the term non-human. I don't like to denote origin. Keeps the aperture open, both scientifically. Right. Certainly, like I've discussed publicly previously, 1930s.
Okay. Can you give me the names and titles of the people with direct firsthand knowledge and access to some of this crash retrieval, some of these crash retrieval programs, and maybe which facilities, military bases that the recovered material would be in? And I know a lot of Congress talked about we're going to go to Area 51, and and there's nothing there anymore anyway. It's just and we move like a glacier. And as soon as we announce it, I'm sure the moving vans would pull up. But please.
I can't discuss that publicly, but I did provide that information both to the Intel committees and the Inspector General.
And we could get that in the skiff if we were allowed to get in a skiff with you. Would that be probably what you would think?
Sure, if you had the appropriate accesses, yeah.
What special access programs cover this information, and how is it possible that they have evaded oversight for so long?
I do know the names. Once again, I can't discuss that publicly and how they've evaded oversight. In a closed setting, I can tell you the specific tradecraft used.
All right.
I want to be in that room.
When do you think those programs
Fly on the wall.
began, and who authorized them?
I do know a lot of that information, but that's something I can't discuss publicly because it's sensitive.
All right. You don't want to jump in on any of this. You're more than welcome to. What level of security clearance is required to fully access these programs?
Well, anybody who has...
and I say that because myself, Representative Gates and Representative Luna were basically turned away at one point at Eglin. So please go right ahead.
Certainly difference between member access and, say, somebody like me, but anybody who has a TSSCI clearance and meets the eligibility criteria, the access adjudicative authority should be able to grant you access.
Mr. Burchett, if you'll yield, so just to put a fine point on that, there's nothing that you're aware of that's above special access program classification.
It's a misnomer that there's anything actually above top secret. Executive Order 13526 delineates the classification levels.
Right, but I draw a point on that because we can have access to those programs, and so the notion that we're not being given that access sort of defies our typical muscle memory here in Congress. Thank you, Mr. Burchett. I'll yield back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Along those lines, Title 10, you may not know this or not, but Title 10 and Title 50 authorization, they seem to say they're inefficient. So who gets to decide this, in your opinion, in the past?
It's a group of career senior executive officials.
Okay, are they government officials?
Both in and out.
Do what?
Both in and out of government, and that's about as far as I can go there. Yeah.
All right, well, that leads to my next question. Which private corporations are directly involved in this program? How much taxpayer money has been invested in these programs, to your knowledge? I mean, we know we audit the Pentagon every year, and I've been here 5 years, and they failed the dadgum thing every year. They lose over $1 billion a year, we think, and I was told the Department of Defense maybe 60% of their assets are unaccounted for, whatever the heck that means. In the public
60%.
sector, you go to jail for that kind of crap. So tell me.
Yeah, I know when I'm $1 off of my DTS travel voucher, I get hammered, but it seems like it doesn't work the other way.
If you sell over if you sell over $600 worth of stuff on eBay now, you get a call from the IRS. So please, what corporations?
Yeah, I don't know the specific metrics towards the end of your question. The specific corporations I did provide.
I try to sell my stuff on eBay all the time.
Divisions
I
spent 11 and a half hours with both Intel committees. So.
Okay, has there been an active U.S. government disinformation campaign to deny the existence of unidentified aerial phenomena? And if so, why?
I can't go beyond what I've already espoused publicly about that.
Damn you, Grush.
Okay, I've been told to ask you what that is and how to get it in the record.
What
have
you stated publicly in your interviews for the congressional record?
If you reference my News Nation interview and I talk about a multi-decade, campaign to disenfranchise public interest, basically.
For the record, if you were me, where would you look? Titles, programs,
she got quite famous
departments, regions, if you could just name anything. And I put that as an open question to the three of you.
I'd be happy to give you that in a closed environment. I can tell you specifically.
Thank you. Commander Fravor?
And I would say, and I've told people that you have to know where to look. They're not going to divulge it to you because of the classification levels. But if you know where to look and who to talk to, which is exactly what Mr. Grush can point you, then you have them.
Okay. Mr. Graves?
I was an operator, so I was defending on folks
Hopefully
like Mr.
something
Grosh
comes
to
out
do
of
that
that.
homework.
Okay. Thank you very much. I yield back to the chair.
But I will say, I'll call it a lazy attitude about declassifying videos. I mean, I've seen some of the videos of the recent shoot down, and I saw no reason that couldn't have been released as long as they mask some data. The American people deserve to see that imagery and full motion video.
I would think, well, in my opinion, I will say things are overclassified. I know for a fact the video or the pictures that came out in the 2020 report that had the stuff off the East Coast, they were taken with an iPhone off the East Coast. A buddy of mine was one of the senior people there, and he said they were originally classified at TSSCI. And my question to him was, what's TSSCI about these? They're an iPhone literally off the vacapes. That's not TSSCI. So they're overclassified, and as soon as they do that, they go in a vault, and then you all have to look for them.
Yeah, so with the overclassification, that may be one way. Are there other ways that the DOD or intelligence agencies are keeping this information from the American people or even from Congress?
I think part of that has been not encouraging reporting. If the problem is not something that can be measured, it's not something that's going to be fixed.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm out of time, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
First of all,
I know of multiple colleagues of mine that got physically injured, and the activity. And I got
by UAPs or by people within the federal government?
Both.
Okay, so there has been activity by alien or non-human technology and or beings that has caused harm to humans.
I can't get into the specifics in an open environment, but at least the activity that I personally witnessed, and I have to be very careful here because they tell you never to acknowledge tradecraft, right? So what I personally witnessed myself and my wife was very disturbing.
Okay. One of my constituents actually sent this next question, and I figured I'd ask it since I had the same thought. You've said that the U.S. has intact spacecraft. You said that the government has alien bodies or alien species. Have you seen have you seen the spacecraft?
I have to be careful to describe what I've seen firsthand and not in this environment, but I could answer that question behind closed doors. Yeah.
And have you seen any of the bodies?
That's something I've not witnessed myself.
Okay, and so with that being said, and the other statement that has been made that was intriguing to me it's intriguing because my view has been that we are billions of light years away from any other system. And the concept that an alien species that's technologically advanced enough to travel billions of light years gets here and somehow is incompetent enough to not survive Earth or crashes is something that I find a little bit far-fetched. And with that being said, you have mentioned that there's interdimensional potential. Could you expound on that?
Yeah, to answer your first question, and I'm here as a fact witness and expert, but I will give you a theoretical framework, at least to work off, to kind of espouse crashes, regardless of your level of sentience, right? Planes crash, cars crash. N number of sorties, however high, a small percentage are going to end in mission failure, if you will, as we say in the Air Force. And then in terms of multidimensionality, that kind of thing, the framework that I'm familiar with, for example, is something called the holographic principle. It derives itself from general relativity and quantum mechanics, and that is, if you want to imagine a 3D object such as yourself casting a shadow onto a 2D surface, that's the holographic principle. So you can be projected, quasi-projected from higher dimensional space to lower dimensional. It's a scientific trope that you can actually cross, literally, as far as I understand, but there's probably guys with PhDs that we could probably argue about that.
But you have not seen any documentation that that's what's occurring.
Only a theoretical framework discussion. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Several months ago, my office received a protected disclosure.
That's the discussion that's going on within their government, that it's some sort of holographic principle where these beings are projecting themselves down through dimensions. But it's hard to understand because, let's say you have a 6-dimensional being then you might only be seeing, you would only ever see the three-dimensional shadow.
But then that doesn't explain the craft that have crashed.
The craft might be like what we would see in the 3D, but they might have way more to them, you know, that we can't see, because if you're a two-dimensional being living on the surface of a piece of paper, when suddenly a cube goes over the light, all you would see was a line, you know, but you'd still see something, but you'd only see the shadow of the cube, and even then you would just see like a big line.
Well, you'd see a square.
No, you wouldn't.
If it was flat on the paper.
No, because you'd only see a square if you're looking down onto it, right? From a three-dimensional perspective, you'd see a square. But if you're on the piece of paper, you'd only see a line, right? And I mean, you could walk around that line and then realize, oh, this is a square, you know.
Unless it was up in the air, and then you see it's a square.
No, but there's no third dimension in on 2D. You only have X and Y. You don't have, Z.
But it's hard to imagine because we're in 3D.
Yeah. So you only have this way and that way. You know, you don't have the diagonal or the third dimension. So you can't look up. You can't look down. There's only right, left. You know.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Which is a possibility, definitely. But yeah, it's interesting to think, like, are some of their form, like, can they manifest a three-dimensional form, or do they exist in the third dimension in some capacity? But then at the same time, if people are reporting grays, they look fully complete within the third dimension, you know? So like you said before, is there some sort of technology where they're almost sending like organic drones, which are the grays?
That's what for me makes the most sense, that, you could be seeing these big crafts and only seeing part of them because they're from a higher dimension. But when they crash, I think these are the robot beings that they send in, that they've designed to be able to be in our dimension.
But you could also have...
But they're probably coming in to get resources, like minerals or testing stuff. Yeah.
You could also have a being that is able to manipulate their density in such a way where they can operate.
But then that to me makes more sense why it would crash than the actual higher dimensional being crashing.
Right.
Because it's true, they can travel through, wormholes and do all this stuff, and somehow they're crashing into a tree. That doesn't make sense, but the thought of something they've created, like a robot crashing, makes more sense.
But then at the same time, if you're a monkey and you're looking at humans, right, and they're like, they can create nanobots and iPhones and screens that can, give portals to different, videos and worlds and stuff. They can fly airplanes and create this incredible technology. How would they ever crash? If you're looking at these interdimensional beings as some sort of god, then where they may be perfect, then it's like hard to...
It's not that I would say they're perfect.
It's hard to imagine that they could make a mistake or like a mission failure, where something went wrong.
It's more like they can zip back into their reality, that it wouldn't like crash in our dimension is more what I'm getting at.
Unless something of their technology failed.
Yeah.
And maybe they themselves, there have been bodies recovered, right? But we don't know the details of that.
But we
recovery.
know greys have been recovered. We know that they're possibly communicating with other types of beings, like the more humanoid looking ones. But these have never been claimed to be recovered. I think they're communicating with those because they're coming in some way, whether it's through a psychic or through, however. I know that those beings can't really be in this dimension, from what I've heard. They're really higher up ones.
But if you think about it...
The only ones you ever hear whistleblowers talking about is always these grey type aliens.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is hard to imagine because at the same time we exist in multiple dimensions, right? At once. So why wouldn't higher dimensional beings?
You really know that,
I mean, we do. We exist in a two-dimensional. We exist in 3D, which is, I guess the equivalent would be like, can we somehow?
We couldn't take our physical bodies into a different dimension. We could only take our astral energy bodies into higher dimensions. Right now,
that we know of.
That is what we know.
Yeah, yogis. Some of the yogis claim others.
Just like Dolores Cannon said, they do sometimes take us up into their dimension so they can do some certain testings, but it takes a lot out of our body. Like that person.
But we don't know that. It's all theory.
That person who went into the craft. Yeah, but we're theorizing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything's permanent, but that guy who went into the craft and it felt like 2 minutes and it was 4 hours.
Yeah.
There's people who go missing and then they come back and people are like, you've been missing for 3 weeks, and they're like, what? I thought it was a couple of hours. This is always the same story that happens when people are dealing with this stuff on a physical level. I'm just saying it. From all over the world, you're hearing these different statements when it comes to abduction and things like that guy who went into the craft. It's always that same story.
So what's the takeaway point?
It takes too much on us. Like our physical bodies, what feels like 2 minutes.
Well, it might just be because we're not accustomed to it. Because, let's say if you spin around in a circle.
I'm saying just right now, it seems like we can't physically get to their dimension, but somehow they're able to. I've heard a lot of people who communicate.
I think if you are managed to get to a certain level of awareness and consciousness, you could be on that level of manipulation, especially if you're getting to a point. I guess if you're using external technology, it could be harder as an evolutionary beings. But if you've evolved intrinsically within yourself to a high level, like if we continue to evolve externally, we might be able to...
Not in this body. Our DNA has to change. But the
DNA is malleable.
The children right now has probably changed where it's of a higher consciousness.
But DNA is not static like we think. It's not something that you're born with it and that's it. You can literally change your DNA. Your DNA changes as you...
I know that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying right now that doesn't seem like the case. The way that we communicate with these beings is through the mind, through astral stuff. We know for a fact the government are constantly working with psychics and the viewers. What are they called?
The remote viewers.
Remote viewers.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
I think a lot of the information actually coming from that they're getting is coming through that way rather than physical. And I think the only physical beings we're seeing is those.
I think we
aliens.
do have the potential, but it would take a certain level of consciousness to be able to traverse dimensions on your own. But I think that is possible.
Avatar, like the TV show, when they're going into the other dimensions, their body stays here. They're having the full-on experience in the other dimension, but their body is here.
What, in the spirit world?
In the spirit world.
But they can also walk through the portal into the spirit world.
No, their body's always in the meditation.
No, there's a difference. If you project into the spirit world, you can't bend because you're using your astral form. But so many people were walking right through the portals.
Oh yeah, they did in the second season.
Yeah, they walk through the portals when Korra opens it.
Yeah, anyway, I know. Guys, we are going off because we don't know anything. This is just it leaves you to chew on so much and to theorize so much. And this is what's frustrating about having limited information.
Yeah, because it could just be advanced beings who are three-dimensional, who have worked out how to navigate through multiple dimensions using craft. and
also,
through space-time using craft. It could be also higher dimensional beings who can manipulate matter in such a way where they can travel through different densities, just like someone can ride the currents of their emotions, you know, or like where someone can, you know, go like this in the air and it will move the elements and then, you know, blow on a piece of paper. They might be able to do that and surf through time. You know, who knows what their capacity is. Or it could just
be that there is no aliens, there is no non-humans in this situation, and this is the government having discovered, which would make sense of why it's so top secret, because they're trying to keep that from other governments, I guess. But it could be that they've discovered how to do this, just like Tesla and people like that were onto this kind of information, and they've been able to create these kind of crafts themselves. And you know, that is also another possibility.
Yeah, but
it's not necessarily that I believe that.
But it sounds like what this guy's saying is that they've recovered non-human bodies.
He said he's never seen a non-human body. That's just what he's heard.
Yeah, he's never seen it himself personally.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
We asked to see any of the evidence that had been taken by flight crew in this endeavor and to observe any radar signature as well as to meet with the flight crew. We were not afforded access to all of the flight crew. And initially, we were not afforded access to images and to radar. Thereafter, we had a bit of a discussion about how authorities flow in the United States of America, and we did see the image. And we did meet with one member of the flight crew who took the image. The image was of something that I am not able to attach to any human capability, either from the United States or from any of our adversaries. And I'm somewhat informed on the matter, having served on the Armed Services Committee for 7 years, having served on the committee that oversees DARPA and advanced technologies for several years. When we spoke with the flight crew, and when he showed us the photo that he'd taken, I asked why the video wasn't engaged, why we didn't have a FLIR system that worked. Here's what he said. They were out on a test mission that day over the Gulf of Mexico, and when you're on a test mission, you're supposed to have clear airspace, not supposed to be anything that shows up. And they saw a sequence of 4 craft in a clear diamond formation for which there is a radar sequence that I alone have observed in the United States Congress. One of the pilots goes to check out that diamond formation and sees a large floating, what I can only describe as an orb, again, like I said, not of any human capability that I'm aware of. And when he approached, he said that his radar went down, he said that his FLIR system malfunctioned, and that he had to manually take this image from one of the lenses, and it was not automated in collection as you would typically see in a test mission. So I guess I'll start with Commander Fravor. How should we think about the fact that this craft that was approached by our pilot had the capability of disarming a number of the sensor and collection systems on that craft?
Well, I think this goes to that national security side, and you can go back through history of things showing up at certain areas and disabling our capabilities, which is disheartening. And for us, I mean, like I said, it completely disabled the radar on the aircraft when it tried to do it, and the only way we could see it is passively, which is how he got that image. So I think that's a concern on what are these doing, not only how do they operate, but their capabilities inside to do things like this.
And how should we think about 4 craft moving in a very clear formation, equidistant from one another, in a diamond? In all of the phenomenon, perhaps, Mr. Grave, that you've analyzed, have we ever seen multiple craft in a single formation?
I have one particular case, and that was during the gimbal incident. The recording on the AT FLIR system shows a single object that rotates. You hear the pilots refer to a fleet of objects that is not visible on the FLIR system, and that was something that I witnessed during the debrief as part of the radar data on the situational awareness page. I would like to add, however, Congressman, there's a small bit of anger, I would say I would feel that those pilots are still facing that difficulty in reporting this topic, and they don't have the tools to be able to mitigate this issue. It just goes to show how serious this is and why this is such an important issue for our pilots and for our nation.
What percentage of UAP sightings, in your belief, go unreported by our pilots?
This is an approximation based off of my personal experience speaking with a number of pilots, but I would estimate we're somewhere near 5% reporting, perhaps.
So like 95% basically don't report seeing UAPs.
That's just my personal estimate.
In the incident off Virginia Beach, do you believe the Navy took the danger to your aircraft seriously after it was reported?
Absolutely.
A few questions for Mr. Favor. As an expert naval aviator, have you ever seen an object that looked and moved like the Tic-tac UAP?
No.
Did the Tic-tac UAP move in such a way that defied the laws of physics?
The way we understand them, yes.
Many dismiss UAP reports as classified weapons testing by our own government, but in your experience as a pilot, does our government typically test advanced weapon systems right next to multi-million-dollar jets without informing our pilots?
No, we have test ranges for that.
It took over 15 years for your encounter with the Tic-tac to be declassified. Do you feel there was a good reason to prevent lawmakers from having access to this footage?
No, I just think it was ignored when it happened, and it just sat somewhere in a file. Never got reported.
In a drawer. It happens a lot up here. Shocker.
Commander Fravor, we have all seen the floating Tic-tac video that you engaged with on November 14th, 2004. Can you briefly talk about why you were off the coast of San Diego that day?
Yeah, we were at a workup with all the battle groups, so we integrate the ships with the carrier, the air wing with the carrier, and we start working. So we were doing an air-to-air defense to hone not only our skills, but those of the USS Princeton when they had been tracking them for 2 weeks. The problem was that there was never manned aircraft airborne when they were tracking them, and this was the first day, and unfortunately, we were the ones airborne and went and saw it.
Do you remember the weather that day? Was it cloudy or windy or anything out of the ordinary on the Pacific coast?
It was actually, if you're familiar with San Diego, it was a perfect day, light winds, no white caps, clear skies, not a cloud. It was, for flying, it was the best.
Now, is it true that you saw, in your words, a 40-foot flying Tic-tac shaped object?
That's correct. Or for some people that can't know what a Tic-tac is, it's a giant flying propane tank.
Fair enough. Did this object come up on radar or interfere with your radar or the USS Princeton?
The Princeton tracked it, the Nimitz tracked it, the E-2 tracked it. We never saw it on our radars. Our fire control radars never picked it up. The other airplane that took the video did get it on a radar. As soon as it tried to lock it, it jammed the radar, spit the lock, and he rapidly switched over to the targeting pod, which you can do in the F-18.
From what you saw that day and what you've seen on video, did you see any source of propulsion from the flying object, including on any potential thermal scans from your aircraft?
No, there's none. There's no IR plume coming out, and Chad, who took the video, went through all the EO, which is black and white TV, and the IR modes, and there's no visible signs of propulsion. It's just sitting in space at 20,000 feet.
In your career, have you ever seen a propulsion system that creates no thermal exhaust?
No.
Can you describe how the aircraft maneuvered?
Abruptly, very determinate. It knew exactly what it was doing. It was aware of our presence, and it had acceleration rates. I mean, it went from 0 to matching our speed in no time at all.
Now, if the fastest plane on Earth was trying to do these maneuvers that you saw, would it be capable of doing that?
No, not even close.
And just to confirm, this object had no wings, correct?
No wings.
Now, was the aircraft that you were flying, was it armed?
No, never felt threatened at all.
If the aircraft was armed, do you believe that your aircraft or any aircraft in possession of the United States could have shot the Tic-tac down?
I'd say no. Just on the performance, it would have just left in a split second.
It looks like that we have a problem here that needs further investigation.
Yes.
In your belief, is this flying Tic-tac, I mean, is it capable of being the product of any other nation on the Earth?
No, like I said earlier, I think it defies current material science and the ability to develop that much propulsion. And I know there's been some physicists who have done calculations, which is beyond anything that we have.
Well, either the United States has an adversary here in this world that we don't know, or we really have some serious investigations to do. I really appreciate you being here. Is there anything else about the November 14th, 2004 incident that you think is important for this committee to know that you haven't been asked here today?
No, it's been said it's probably the most credible UFO sighting in history based on all the sensors that were tracking it, and then for us to get visual and to go against the naysayers that it's something on the screen or whatever. I mean, there's 4 sets of human eyeballs. We're all very credible. Of the 6 of us that were involved in the thing, including the video, every one of us is going to do 20 plus years in the military in very responsible positions. So I'd say the world needs to know that. It's not a joke.
No, thank you very much for your testimony here today for all of you, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Why is it that you refer to the phenomenon as non-human intelligence? Why deviate from the basis of extraterrestrial life?
I think the phenomenon is very complex, and I like to leave an open mind analytically to specific origin.
When you say specific origin, are you referring, can you elaborate on that for those that might not?
If it's a traditional extraterrestrial origin or something else that we don't quite understand from either a biological or astrophysics perspective, I just like to keep an open mind on what it could be,
Okay, and referring to your News Nation interview, you had referenced specific treaties between governments. Article 3 of the Nuclear Arms Treaty with Russia identifies UAPs. It specifically mentions them. To your knowledge, are there safety measures in place with foreign governments or other superpowers to avoid an escalatory situation in the event that a UAP malevolent event occurs?
You're referring to actual public treaty in the UN Register. It's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, the Agreement on Measures to Reduce the Risk of Outbreak of Nuclear War, signed in 1971. Unclassified treaty, publicly available. And if you cite the George Washington University National Security Archives, you will find the declassified in 2013 specific provisions in the specific red line flash message traffic with the specific codes pursuant to Article 3 and Article, also Situation 2, which is in the previously classified NSA archive. What I would recommend, and I tried to get access, but I got a wall of silence at the White House, was those specific incidents when those message traffic was used. I think some scholarship on that would open the door to a further investigation using those publicly available information.
Thank you.
Fellow pilots, military pilots, are there also commercial pilots who've encountered the same kind of sightings that you described before?
They are similar. Pilots are seeing them, commercial pilots are seeing them, and they're typically closer, and the range of what they're seeing is pretty large.
What is the most vivid, concrete sighting with the naked eye of the objects that you described before, the cube-like objects?
Certainly. I think the most vivid sighting of that would have been near midair that we had at the entrance to our working area. One of these objects was completely stationary at the exact entrance to our working areas, not only geographically but also at altitude. So it was right where all the jets are going, essentially, on the eastern seaboard. The 2 aircraft flew within about 50 feet of the object, and that was a very close visual sighting.
50 feet.
And you were in one of the aircraft?
I was not. I was there when the pilot landed. He canceled the mission after, and I was there. He was in the ready room with all his gear on, with his mouth open, and I asked him what the problem was, and he said he almost hit one of those darn things.
He said he was 50 feet away from it?
Yes, sir.
And his description of the object was consistent with the description you gave us before?
A dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere.
Inside of a clear sphere?
Yes.
And with no self-evident propulsion system?
No wings, no IR energy coming off of the vehicle, nothing tethering it to the ground. And that was primarily what we were experiencing out there.
I'm over time. Thank you very much for your...
And that's it.
Cool.
Yeah. I think that last thing was pretty interesting. 50 feet. Yeah, and they keep saying no infrared, and that always brings me back to, that always brings me back to what Bob Lazar said, is that, you know, that little thing he had in the room which was generating like a force field? It was like a gravitic force field where he was trying to touch it, but it was like he was coming across like this field of empty air, but when they were studying it, it was giving off no thermal energy. And everything we have in our world gives off some form of thermal energy when it comes to release. Like this microphone will be giving off small amounts of thermal energy. The laptop, the lights, the phone, everything gives off something. So for this to give off 0, it means it's not using like any, it's just like to have no thermal energy loss in our current understanding of physics is literally impossible right now.
That's crazy.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. I know there's this, who knows how well trusted these photos can be, but there was some civilian shots of what we on the screen of what we call, what is a black cube, and he took a picture of it as it was. He said there's kind of like dark clouds started forming, and then all of a sudden, like it was coming out of a portal, this black cube just appeared in the sky.
Crazy.
And he snapped some photos of it, very very small, and he tried to catch it while it was moving. But it just reminds me a lot of what we were reading here. And there's some conspiracy theorists who are relating it to more biblical times, because in Semitic civilizations they referred to God as Saturn or as El, who is the supreme deity and represented by a black cube. And if you look at the etymology of the word Kabbalah or Kaaba, cube, and Allah means God, you get the cube of God. And when we go to Mecca, what do we have in the center? It's this big black cube that was said to be the place that housed God. And that's where everyone migrates to. So it's very interesting. Could it be that there's some sort of connection to these black cube craft in our past? And were they interacting with humans more frequently then? Are we seeing something returning, or that something that's always been here for thousands of years? So yeah, it's interesting. Here's a very zoomed in, enhanced filter of this thing just kind of like manifesting itself through the air. This cube craft.
Yeah, really interesting. The most interesting new description of a craft is that cube in a sphere and the big rectangle.
Yeah.
Crazy.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you found this congressional interview interesting, and I hope we brought up some good points. I know there's so much to talk about it, including like what is these things, and there's so many questions that I'm sure you guys are wondering and want to ask, and we'd love to.
We are asking them too.
Of course,
we don't know. This is the thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, like it's crazy.
But we would love to hear any
your thoughts, your theories, definitely.
Any discussions that you guys want to have, we're really open to it. I'd love to have back and forth with you guys on what you think. Any information that you guys have seen that we didn't cover, or that is like, oh, hey guys, check this out, cover this. We would love to see that. And if you want to support us, then you can buy us a book, and we'll have a link down in the description. And I
just wanted to say that apparently Trey said I looked bored while I was watching, but it's only because when I'm concentrating on listening, I look bored. So if you thought that, while I was watching, I don't know what I look like while I'm listening, but obviously I look bored, and people have actually said that about me before.
No, I mean...
I've had comments on this channel about it, but I have to listen on this, and that's just... It's like some people have a resting bitch face, I have a resting bored face.
Yeah.
When I'm listening, that's just how my face looks. I'm not bored, I find it very interesting, and I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, me too. Like, when I'm zoned into something, I'm not aware of my face. And normally it'll go into like a,
I can't listen if I'm like trying to be animated and act at the same time. I'm just being authentic. That's what I look like when I'm listening. So,
and when I get focused, oftentimes like you'll come in and be like, what's wrong? Are you upset about something? It's because I look kind of angry when I'm focusing.
You edited this together, you kind of know what they're saying, so you don't feel like you need to listen as hard as me. I'm trying to listen so I can
I only remember
take this
snippets,
information
but yeah.
in. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's just how it is. Like, I'm not bored. I just wanted to put that out there.
No, and I'm sure people will be focusing more on the video than us listening to the video as well. But yeah.
Yeah. All right, though. This has been really fun, and everything I've said personally has literally just been me theorizing. What could this possibly be? You know, I don't know anything in concrete, but I find it so interesting and so exciting to be in these times. So I'm excited to do more videos on this. Like Trey said, definitely send us anything we've missed, you know, so that we can check that out and possibly do more episodes on what's coming out on this subject.
Yeah, definitely. So it's great seeing you guys. Next time we speak, we will be in London, different set. And yeah, can't wait. I have an interesting episode planned regarding missing time in our chronological sequence of events, as well as a civilization that may have been erased from history for certain political gains. But
you know what that
tune
means.
in for that.
You need to subscribe if you're not. Because we have so many people watch this channel and they don't subscribe. So if you've made it all this way, just make sure you subscribe, because we're always coming out with really interesting stuff.
Yeah, cool guys.
Thank you
Bye.
for watching. Bye.
不知道呀，太神奇了。
Yeah, we have